What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Man, there's been so many things that have happened, both good and bad. Lots of things in my life just kind of went 360 real fast, but I'm trying to stay positive and bring y'all some new and exciting things that we're doing here. And as you can tell, I'm not at my house. Yeah, I'm in a studio. Check out the logo on the wall right here. It's legit. We are in the JPM first ever studio location. There is stuff everywhere. We're in the middle of setting up this desk and getting those together and all this stuff all together. You've probably seen the TikTok where we built the podcast studio, which is over here. We got a lot more that's happening, but today we're talking about storage, something that a lot of people don't actually put a lot of money into because spending $5,000 on storage just seems boring. Back here, we're gonna unbox, and I've actually wanted to do a video like this since I got my first one, and I wanted to show you how to set up a network attached storage, a NAS, as a filmmaker, as a videographer, someone who edits both with a laptop or a home PC. Like in my case, we have laptops, we've got my workstations. Now we'll have 2 or 3 editors in the studio working, and we all need to access the same files at the same time. And the only way to do that without having to, have copies of the media spread out is a NAS. Shout out to QNAP for sending out the QNAP TS-1655 NAS. This is a beast of a NAS system, 16-bay NAS system. And the biggest thing, and I'll talk about this a couple of times while we're setting it up and probably while we're also, at the computer, is that when you're buying a NAS, one thing that I learned the hard way and that I see a lot of people actually do is that they start out with these 4-bay NAS systems. And if you're going for speed, 4 bays is just not enough. Trust me. You want to be able to use 10 gig Ethernet and transfer speeds at 1 gigabyte per second. You're going to need something with, I would say at least minimum 8 bays. Get you an 8-bay NAS or more, and you're going to be in good shape. So we're going to unbox all this, get into it. Some of the things that I have that they didn't send me that we needed for this particular build for the studio is that we're going to need a 10 gig Ethernet switch. So I also got one from QNAP. This is a QNAP QSW12088C. The reason I went with this one is because it has 8 10 gig Ethernet ports. I'm future-proofing myself. If I hook up anything to this, why not get the full potential of what my NAS can deliver, especially if it's a computer. We'll be doing some editing back here for like the JPM Live Academy. Haven't talked about that yet, but it's coming soon. This is going to be a platform designed for wedding filmmakers, teaching you all about this style and this new approach in documentary wedding storytelling. Outside of that, I also have the OWC Thunderbolt to 10 gig Ethernet adapter. This is specifically for the laptops, because the laptops don't have ports on them. The desktops, we actually have 10 gig Ethernet cards, which are these guys right here. This is also a QNAP piece. This is actually going to go into the TS-1655 NAS. I'll probably leave something over here just so you can see like what those translate to in gigabytes. And then over here, I kind of went all in because, we're filming now 3-day productions with people. We're going to be upping that soon. I have couples that we're starting to film with and their wedding isn't until 2026. And so we needed a way to effectively house all of this media and know that it's going to stay safe and secure. And so we are starting to do a 3-2-1 backup system. So if you remember, like last year, I actually got a different QNAP NAS, and that one's still going to stay at my house. So my storage solution now is going to be, our 3-2-1 solution is going to be our NAS here in the office. It's going to auto back up to the NAS at home, and then that NAS is also going to upload to Dropbox with the Dropbox business. And then we'll keep remote copies or local copies for my main workstation on the G Shuttle, which also has 100 terabytes in that. But this bad boy is going to get loaded with 12, 22 terabyte hard drives. Let's open some stuff up. The front of it, you're going to have all of your 3.5-inch SATA drives. So that's what those big 22 terabyte drives get loaded into. And then these are going to be used I'm going to use them for cache storage. I don't have any SSDs. These are your 2.5-inch SSD slots. A lot of NAS units will come this way. You actually can save a little bit of money. If you don't need 10 gig Ethernet, which if you're a filmmaker, I would recommend it because even if you're not shooting in RAW, you're filming things like You know, you have 200 gigabytes or 300 gigabytes, it's just gonna transfer so much faster, especially if you got those Sony cards that transfer like 800 megabits per second or megabytes per second. I have a few Angelbird cards that transfer at like 500 megabytes per second. Having 10 gig Ethernet will allow you to reach those speeds. One thing I want to point out, the TS-1655 only comes with two 2.5 gig ports. Now, this is great if you're just trying to get, you know, plug and play, but what I actually bought was the QNAP 10 gig Ethernet expansion card. And this is gonna go in just into this port here. It's essentially just like plugging in a card into the PCIe Express port of your computer. This gets plugged in and now I can achieve 10 gig Ethernet speeds. I'll be able to run this or plug a cable from that into the 10 gig switch and then power everything in the studio with the 10 gig speeds. Quick recap, get a NAS that has at least 8 bays. Even if you don't start with 8, you can start with 2 drives and buy as you go up, but at least get one with 8 so you can get to the point where you can get crazy good speeds and reliability, and then it grows with you. And then if your NAS doesn't have a 10 gig Ethernet built into it, make sure that it at least offers expansion ports. There are some NAS units that you can't get an expansion slot, which means you don't have the option of buying one of these. So this is the QXG10G2T-X710 from QNAP. All they had to say was this is just a 2-port 10 gig Ethernet adapter. That's basically all it is. Crazy long name, but that's what companies like. So all this is, like I said, is just a PCIe card. Majority of these also work in your computer, and so I've already installed one in the computer that has a 10 gig card because most of the ports in your workstations are usually going to be 5 gig at best, but most of them are going to be that 2.5 is what you usually see is common. So this guy is just going to plug directly in, and it's all plug and play. You don't have to install any software. So this is what it looks like here. So now all I'm gonna do is install the 10 gig card into the back of the QNAP NAS. So to do that, we need to take all these screws off, and then the whole housing will pop off, and then we'll take one of these plates out and then plug it in. So let's get started on that.
Please don't say it's love if it ain't that.
Pull this bad boy out, and voila, there's the inside.
If your day is good, I relate that. Peace and piecing up the payback.
We just pop this bad boy in.
Give it to me, I create that. Money ain't the mission, man, I hate that.
Very simple, very simple. Now let's just go ahead and put the cover back on, and then we will install the drives, get this into the storage area, and then start configuring it. So that's the fun part. Let's do it.
They gon' talk about you when the truth told. Nobody
Let's get these bad boys popped in.
Dusting on my shoulder, now it's back on. Fighting to my level with the caps on.
If it doesn't go, don't force it. When we got the office space, there was no Ethernet anywhere, so we had to do our own Ethernet runs. All right, let's run some cables. I feel like straight IT. It's okay, they're all in their own world. I got one installed back here. This is because when we do the JPM Live Academy, I'll also need to access the files for the live editing, stuff like that. And then we've got 6 plugged in that we ran through the ceiling to that side for all the workstations. 6 is overkill, we only need 3, but you never know, JPM might grow. We might have guest editors and we might need somebody to plug in, and they can do that by just plugging into one of those outlets, which will all be ran and powered through the switch. Okay, so that is it for all of the drives. We got all 12 drives installed, 240 terabytes. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about the switch, and then in the next video, I'll show you how to actually configure everything at the computer. The cool thing about this switch and most 10 gig ports is that they are, I guess you could say, backwards compatible. So I could plug in a device here, and whatever the fastest speed of the device I plugged into it is, that's going to be the actual speed that the port runs at. This port is capable of 10 gig Ethernet, but if my computer only had 2.5 gig Ethernet, then this port will give it the 2.5 gig Ethernet. It will actually automatically switch. There's nothing extra you gotta do in the device itself to tell it to do so. That's another thing to point out. If you're trying to maximize on your speeds, both the sending and receiving device need to be the same speed. So the sending device being the switch and the NAS. The NAS is sending the signal to the switch is sending the signal to the computer, or any other device that you have plugged in. Those devices all need to have a 10 gig Ethernet card put in them. If my computer only had a 5 gig card, like I said, I'm only gonna get 5 gigabit speeds coming from the switch because of the speed restriction on the computer. So keep that in mind. Your workstation, if you have a laptop like a MacBook Pro, or I have a few MSI laptops, you'll want something like the OWC Thunderbolt 3 to 10 gig Ethernet adapter. All it is Thunderbolt 3. Thunderbolt, just so that you know, Thunderbolt 3 is capable of 40 gigabits per second. So you get crazy, crazy speeds with this. So it can easily transfer to a 10 gig Ethernet port, giving you the same transfer speeds, almost 1 gigabyte per second transfer speeds or data rates. So we're in the server room now. I've got everything plugged in anyways. So one thing I want to bring up is the fact that you almost always want to have one of these UPC power supplies. All this is just a backup battery, essentially. So power goes out, your internet, everything is still running, especially your NAS. You don't want to just unplug your NAS. That could probably be the most detrimental thing you can do, especially with all the disks spinning. Right now, I have everything plugged into this power supply, including my Wi-Fi, because I hate when the power goes out and you don't have internet. So the internet, the router, the QNAP, the NAS, and the switch all plugged into the power supply over here. And then the power supply is plugged into the wall back below. Now we're gonna start daisy chaining all of this stuff. And so to make it super simple, I'm gonna use port 1 with, like I said, I have some of these 10 gig Ethernet to, or I guess RJ45 to SFP plus adapters. So this here, so if you look at port 1 through 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all SFP plus. Whereas these ports 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 are all SFP plus combo ports, which means I can use Ethernet directly and it won't use SFP plus number 5, or I can use SFP plus and it won't use port number 5. So it makes it easier so you don't need to buy extra hardware. But I want to utilize all of our ports, so we're going to plug this in, and that's locked into place. That's going to be for connecting directly to the NAS, so the NAS will run directly into port 1. And I got my green light letting me know that the link is connected. Okay, so all of our cables that we ran are right here. So we've got all 7 ports, and we labeled each one so we know which port was going where. So we got this one is the back wall, which is back there. We've got all ports 1 through 7 or 1 through 6 for the other side. We're gonna start plugging these guys in accordingly. And then we should be able to go to the other side. We'll connect the router through the NAS as well. So everything has to be connected together, basically. Everything speaks to each other through your network. The way I have everything set up now is I have the router connected to the switch. I have all 7 of our wall jacks, our RJ45 wall jacks, plugged into the switch, which is going to supply internet. So everything's going to be controlled from the QNAP switch. In the next video, I'll do a screen record and show you all of the steps that it takes to get the NAS configured, to get the backup started with your existing NAS if you have one, as well as a Dropbox backup. I'll show you all of those things because that's very important if you're dealing with video, just having copies on copies, and this stuff is not cheap. So before you buy your next camera, invest in a good storage solution, okay? That's all I'm gonna say about that, and I'll see y'all in the next.
I don't know if they've been praying for me or they praying on me, man. Just know that the prayers appreciated. So rich way before a check, pre-check like I TSA it. I can never let them box me in. They wanna corner me out. My city seem